Hello students, welcome back to my poetry class. Today we are going to study the poem Dawn at Puri. This poem is composed by one of the most prolific and prominent modern Indian English poet, Jayanta Mahapatra. Jayanta Mahapatra was a teacher of physics, a man of science, but at the same time, he emerged as a great representative of Indian poetry in 20th century with his innumerable poems depicting the cultural ethos and landscape of India and particularly of his native place, Odisha. Mahapatra's poetry very finely depicts different emotions of life like love, pain, death, etc. in a multi-layered manner. In his interview, he has claimed that he writes from his memory of the past, of his living experiences, and he writes very in a very craftful manner by trading between his experiences as a teacher of physics and his personal feelings, his personal emotions. Therefore, in his poetry, we find the light and shadow, space and time through which he moves, and rhythm and beat of these provide the throbbing and pulsating of those emotions that keep pace with the theme. And blending both the scientific rationality and the literary emotions, he has taken liberty with imageries, photography, silhouettes, and wordplay. His poetry doesn't give us any pleasure or joy as we get from the romantic poets or the poets who depict nature, but compels us to reflect or explore ourself and its consciousness along with the surrounding environment. As a poet, he is very sensitive and his poems deal with the experiences of life in its layered existence, the physical, the mental, the intellectual, and the spiritual. So, the present poem, Dawn at Puri, as the title suggests, that it is the early morning. The poet finds this sea beach of Puri, one of the acclaimed holy places of India and a place of religious traveling, and the place is also at- very attractive because of its proximity to the seashore, one of the most beautiful seashores. So the poet just finds there the opening of the day, the dawn, breaking out the darkness of the night. And in that dawn, when the things are becoming gradually visible, the poet describes what he finds there. So the poem begins with a hyperbole, endless crow noise. So immediately this line is suggesting the sense of continuity, the sense of simultaneity, the sense of a living experience. Life begins with a noise. The day begins with a noise. The crows are the makers of that noise at the beginning of the day, and endless crow noises. And this noise is endless. And it is not only the declaration of the breaking of the day, but it is also a testimony to the human habitat, because the crow is associated with the human habitat. It is like a pariah, lives on the waste, lives on the foods and other substances. The crow symbolizes the presence of life. The crow also symbolizes the presence of death. So, the endless crow noises, in a very condensed manner, represents the totality of life, where the life is throbbing, where the life is pulsating, and where the life is encountering the death as well. A skull in the holy sands tilts its empty country towards hunger. And the poet discovers a skull in the sands of the seashore. And the skull, in a conventional manner, is a symbol of death and danger. And here this skull is also suggesting that this land, this holy land, is not only the land where there is the God, the presence of the God, or the people living around, but also is a land where there is death. Death is being stressed, and this death may be in several layers. But the skull tilting towards the land, suggesting that the land is itself suffering from this emptiness which is suggested by the skull. The skull is a symbol of death, as well as the skull represents an emptiness. So the land is being suggested as empty, but it is not empty of the people, but it is empty of its resources. It is a poor land. The skull in the holy sand tilts its empty country towards hunger. There is hunger. There is deprivation. This is a land ravaged by natural calamities in frequency as well as the other aspects of life. It is a poor land where people are suffering from poverty, hunger, and all that. White clad widowed women past the centers of their life are waiting to enter the great temple. The great temple, the temple of Lord Jagannath, who is believed as the god of Kali Yuga, the modern era. He is to protect everyone, he is to deliver everyone. So, the white clad widowed women, widows, who are considered as the curse by the Indian society, who are considered as very inauspicious in every occasion of life, being thrown out of the society, and they have nowhere to go but to the shelter of the god. So these women with their white clad bodies are waiting past the centers of their lives. They have already gone past the centers of their life. So what is the center of their life? In a patriarchal society, the center of a woman's life is her husband. So their husband is gone. Therefore, they have no importance, no significance in the society. They are unwanted in the society. And the center also could be the youth. But if the husband is not there, the society considers that they are past their youth, whether they are biologically young or old, but they are considered socially as past their youth. Therefore, the poet is telling, past the centers of their lives, are waiting to enter the great temple. They are waiting for the temple to open up, and they will be entering the great temple. They have great faith on the Lord that He will deliver them out of this life, out of their cursed existence, out of their deprivation. And they are reposing great faith on that. And they are following the social custom. They are conditioned by the social custom. Their austere eyes stare like those caught in a net, hanging by the dawn shining strands of faith. And how they look towards the temple, towards the place of the god. Austere eyes. Their eyes have no excitement. Their eyes have no enquiry. Their eyes have nothing to show that they are living and thriving as human creatures. There is no sign of movement. Rather, it is full of self-pity. They stare like those caught in a net. The poet is comparing them with the fish caught in the net of the fisherman. The fish caught in the net is still in the water, but it knows that it has been trapped. The invisible net had made it captive. So the widows are within the society, they are living in the society, but they are within the captive, invisible social customs, which doesn't allow them to live freely, to live according to their desire or wish. They are at the mercy of the society. They are been made outcast of the society. So they are like those caught in a net. So the feeling of pity, the feeling of miserliness, they're all being visible through their eyes, hanging by the dawn shining strands of faith. And their faith of deliverance on the great God is hanging like the strands of the shining dawn, as the daylight in the early morning falls and shows that it is the light, but there is no sense of permanence, there is no sense of belief that this light will be there. So these women, they also look towards the God, looking up to the God, but they don't know whether they will be delivered or not, whether the God will be merciful to him or not. The frail early light catches ruined leprous cells leaning against one another, a mass of crouched faces without names. Then the poet is shifting to another scenario, another aspect. And what is that? The frail early light. The early light of the dawn is bringing out another scenario. What was that? Ruined leprous cells, the dead cells coming from the sea. Once upon a time, they were living creatures. They were swimming within the sea, but now they are dead. And the leprous cells, the white cells, are being thrown out by the sea to the land. As the widows are thrown out of their home, so these cells are also thrown out of their home from the sea to the shore. And they are helpless, leaning against one another. And they are there, leaning against one another. They are helpless, like these widows, a mass of crouched faces without names. But the poet is bringing a comparison between these leprous cells with those crouched faces without names. Who are these people who are crouching there? They are crouching before the temple. These are the patients of leprosy, the leper patients who are also thrown out by the people from the society, because leprosy is considered as one of the curses in the Indian society, in the conventional Indian society. So the patients who suffered from leprosy, they are thrown out of their homes. They have to fend for themselves. They have to beg for themselves. So they go to the doors of the temple. There they sit in their helplessness, helping each other and begging for their existence. So the poet is presenting the pathetic condition of these beggars, the widows, and comparing them with the leprous cells which are dead. And these beggars, they are nameless, without their names. Once they had names, once they had home, once they had family, they were the member of the society. But now they are thrown out. They don't have names. They are the beggars. And suddenly breaks out my hide into the smoky blaze of sullen solitary pyre. Then moving further, the poet discovers a funeral ground which is existing there in the seashore of Puri. which is named as Sargodwar, the door to heaven, the gateway to heaven. And it is believed by the Hindus that if after death the dead body is burnt there, the soul will be released from this earthly illusion and will directly go to the heaven, to the God. Therefore, dead bodies are burnt there. And he finds, suddenly breaks out from out of my hide into the smoky blaze of a sullen solitary fire. There is a desolate, solitary, single pyre. A body was being burnt, and the smoke and fire of it immediately brings the poet into some memory, into some consciousness. So, what is that consciousness? What is that memory? Feels my aging mother, which is about his old mother. He immediately feels within him, within his hide, within his body, the words of his mother, the wishes of his mother, her last wish to be cremated here. So, what was the wish of her mother? She had the last wish that she should be cremated here. She should be delivered out of her body immediately, and her soul should go to the heaven directly. So that was the wish of the mother before the son. Twisting uncertainty like light on the shifting sands. But the poet is not sure whether it will be realized on the part of her mother's soul, because the poet is very much skeptic, very much in doubt about these social and religious rituals and rites. He doesn't subscribe to these rites and rituals where he is talking about the widows, the leprosy patients being made outcast of the society. He is having the doubt that whether these people and the soul of his mother will be delivered by the great Lord. Therefore, there is twisting uncertainty like light, as the light that is falling on the seashore. It is having uncertainty. Now it is here, then it will not be there. Or the light is also shifting throughout the day. So the poet's mind, the poet's belief is also, faith is also shifting. That he, as a man of science, doesn't believe, doesn't subscribe to them. But it is his filial responsibility, it is his filial relation that makes him believe to some extent. If the mother wishes, then there must be something, because the mother gives the child the world. The mother gives the belief that it is the world. The mother provides the faith. So the poet is oscillating between faith and doubt on the shifting sands. As the sands are shifting by the movement of the wind in the seashore, so the poet is approaching that state of truth where the truth is also shifting. The truth is not absolute in human life. Everything is relative. Everything is contemporary. It is shifting. So the poem ends with that sense of uncertainty. What will happen? But The poem in general is trying to explore the hypocrisy of our social and religious customs, that we make our own people like widows and the leper patients the outcasts, and we believe that they should go to the God and God will deliver. If we human beings, being the part of their own existence, just desert them, so how God will deliver? But still, we all are living in a faith, and faith moves us. Faith moves us through our suffering, our desperation, our sadness, and everything. The poet cannot discount the value of faith. In spite of going through all these in a scientific manner, in a rational manner, he somehow also finds the faith is having its weight, is having its value. Therefore, the poem is one of faith and doubt cast against the expansion and eternity of Puri seashore. And it shows the hypocrisy and exploitation of the society, and as well as loneliness and alienation of the individual, the poet in particular. And this land here is not only Orissa, it represents the whole of India. The tone of the poem is very sad and somber. So generally, Jayanta Mahapatra's poetic themes are about lessons of life and statements about human nature. They explore Indian sensibility and ethos, and here that ethos is being presented in a very layered manner. And because of its layered presentation, his poems become sometimes vague in expression and obscure, because modern poetry is obscure. So he becomes obscure. And in one of his interviews, he said that his obscurity is not intentional, but his obscurity is from his experience of life, what he had seen in his childhood and what he is encountering at his adult life. They have all changed, and probably the obscurity is coming from his adherence to the old images and his realizations of the present. The overlapping landscape, culture, and mindscape, they're all being presented simultaneously in this poem. So we have to be very careful in analyzing and going through this poem. And the poem can pose the questions like drawing a pen picture of the dawn. So when we are going to answer this question, we have to enumerate, we have to make the list what the poet encounters, how many aspects of life he encounters on the sea beach at the early dawn at Puri. And the question also can be asked about the shut note on the temple, its deities, its belief, its visitors, and all that. Or can be asked about the poet's intention of presenting the widows, the leprous cells, the leper patients, and the burning pyre. So these are presenting the different aspects of life that do not subscribe to the socio-religious image of India. We are considered as good people, religious people, but in the name of religion, in the name of our social ethos, the cruelty we are perpetuating on some of our fellow human beings. But at the same time, how we are revering the dead bodies, these are very ironical. So the poem is using irony, particularly in the word great temple as well as the holy sands. These are the phrases which are bringing out the irony. So I think I have made you just find some meaning or been able to explain something out of this great poem. Thank you.